Hello friends, welcome back. In today's video, I'm going to share with you some easy but delicious dinners that I have made for my family of 6. I see a lot of families stuck in the dinner rut, making the same meals every week and looking to switch things up a bit. So today I will be sharing what I cook for my family in a week. These meals are all low budget, low effort, and perfect for a family meal during a busy week. I will post on the screen here our dinner plan for the week, and throughout the video, I will post the recipe cards for you in case you'd like to screenshot any of the recipes. I'm starting off with making a Mediterranean steak bowl. Something that I do a lot in my family is make bowls. Usually they consist of rice or a bed of vegetables, and then I put some kind of meat on top, and my family is a saucy family, so I will also put some kind of sauce. Usually I make it and some cheese. I do that with a lot of different things, so you will see that throughout these videos that I make quite a bit of bowls. It's just something really easy. And also, if I have like all the ingredients on hand, like rice, for instance, I make a lot of rice at one time and then we have leftovers. So a quick, easy meal is just to take out that rice, make a small thing of meat really quick, really any kind. You could do chicken, steak, beef, I mean, really anything. And then just assemble a bowl with whatever you have on hand. So I tend to do that a lot. It's a very easy thing, and my family usually always enjoys these. My family is not huge on Mediterranean style food. They like some of it, but like they're not big with olives. They like garlic, but just not all the flavors are their jam. They're mine, but not necessarily the rest of my family's. So I don't make a lot of Mediterranean dishes for them. I usually will just make a smaller quantity for myself. But I had seen these a while ago and the picture looked incredible. So I don't even think it was a recipe. I think it was just a picture, but I kind of just used that as inspiration and created my own bowls out of these. So while the rice was cooking on the stove, I am cutting up all my vegetables, and I don't really know what the tomato and onions and balsamic and all that is called, but I make it frequently, and usually I'll actually put in like some mozzarella cheese. It is one of my favorite things, but my family doesn't enjoy it. So I'm only making a small amount of it for them, and they actually, I don't know why they don't usually like it, because they loved this recipe whenever I served it in the bowl. Even my daughter, who does not like tomatoes and is not huge on onions and never usually likes this when I make it, she was like, oh my gosh, this is incredible, and was sitting there just eating it by itself. So these ended up being a huge hit. We only had enough for one serving of leftovers, so my husband took that to work this morning, but this was really, really good. We will have to add this to our normal rotation of dinners. I know I mentioned that I had rice cooking on the stove. I did not include the recipe for the rice in any of the recipes on today's video, mostly because I have made rice a lot of times on my channel, so I didn't want to overdo it and put it in all of it. I will link videos below where it does have the recipe for the rice that I am making though. So I went ahead and I cut up the cucumbers. You can really do that however your family likes it. My family loves cucumbers and they'll pretty much eat them however I make them. So I cut them in kind of larger chunks and I put those in a bowl, and then I cut up cherry tomatoes. I just halved them and I put them in a bowl. I cut up about I only did about a quarter of a red onion. The recipe says about a half, and it says 1 pint of cherry tomatoes. I didn't do as much because, like I said, I didn't expect my family to actually like them as much as they did. So I didn't do as much. And then you'll salt and pepper it. I add a little bit of garlic, and then I add a balsamic glaze and vinegar. I will show those in there. I just mix it up and set it aside for it to kind of mesh well together while everything's cooking. And I realize what you're probably thinking. It's a Mediterranean bowl, but I did not put any olives in. The only person that likes olives in my family is my 15-year-old son, and even he is a little iffy about them. He likes them on certain things. He'll put them in certain pastas or on pizza or something like that. I'm generally like that too, but he definitely likes them significantly more than anybody else in the family. My husband, he will not eat anything with olives. So I did not include any olives. However, I'm sure that they would be great if you added olives into the bowl itself too. The recipe calls for some tzatziki sauce. I have trouble finding that where I'm at. It's not usually in stores. And honestly, the few that I have found in stores isn't really that good. I miss the real authentic tzatziki sauce from restaurants that we would go to in Chicago. But I went ahead and I kind of just mixed one up with like yogurt and garlic, some dill. There was a couple different things that I added in that. And it is not even comparable, I feel like, to the really good authentic tzatziki, but it was a really great replacement. But if you can get or make your own like more authentic tzatziki, I highly recommend that. And so I didn't put in any recipe because it's really not a tzatziki, but if you can get yours or make yours, I suggest doing that because I love it and it's a great addition, but I just have so much trouble finding a good one in my area. I'm moving on to making the steak. Now that I have all the vegetables prepped and the rice is done, I wanted to save the steak for last because we generally like it medium rare, so it doesn't take hardly any time to cook. I just got a cheap pack of steaks. I don't even know what they were. I should have looked before I threw out the package, but I have a million kids and I'm going to chop these up into slices so I don't feel like it really made a difference. If you're eating a steak by itself, I realize that makes a difference, but we're not. We're adding these to bowls, and when you have a large family and you can kind of cut costs a little bit, I recommend, and that's what I did. So I bought cheaper, they're not super thin, but they're also not super thick steaks, and I just season them with salt, pepper, and garlic because I like to taste my steak. I don't like the heavy marinades, so I keep it very simple and cooked it. And then we're just going to top, a couple pieces in each bowl, and it ended up being perfect. This recipe was probably a 9 out of 10, if not a 10 out of 10 for me. So good. It felt fresh. After all these cold days and soups and crockpot meals, something fresh and green just feels so good. So, loved this meal. I'm moving on to making a loaded baked potato soup. This was originally a copycat version of somewhere. I don't really remember where. Maybe Longhorn Steakhouse. I don't know. I can't remember. I'll have to look it up. But anyway, I adapted a couple of things, and I don't really know why I had any business doing that, to be completely honest, because I am okay. So I've made baked potato soup only a couple of times, and not this recipe. And I've made soup with potatoes and stuff like that. It just never was really a strong point of mine. I don't know. Um, and it was just never a favorite. So I don't make it too often. However, I came across this recipe, and like I said, I kind of switched it up a little bit. So I put on the recipe card what I had done, and this is probably one of my new favorites. It is fabulous. If you like a good baked potato soup, I highly recommend trying this. My cousin, she, while we were all snowed in, she made a baked potato soup, and I was so jealous. I was craving it. I'm like, oh my gosh, that sounds amazing. It looked amazing. And we were snowed in and could not get out for 4 days. I think we were snowed in. And so I didn't have any of the ingredients. And so for like 4 days, I'm like, oh, I really wish I could have some of this. So the very first day that we were able to actually get out, I ended up going to the store and getting the ingredients and making this. And I'm so glad I did. It was seriously, seriously amazing. Um, when I started doing this, I originally thought I was going to be putting it in the crock pot. And then as I'm making this, I'm like, I'm literally making the entire thing in this pot. So I made it really early, like I think even before lunch. I think I made it in the morning thinking it was going in the crock pot. And then I realized, oh no, this is all like a one pot thing. So it came together fairly quick, and it was actually so good. So usually whenever I make something, I will put a small bowl aside and I taste test it to make sure it, if it needs anything, I can add it. And a lot of the times my kids will come in and they will also taste test from this bowl. So I had done that this day, and my daughter, she came in to try it and she was like, "Oh my gosh, this is so good." And she ended up eating the entire sampling bowl and then insisting that she had this for lunch and then had it again for dinner. And it made a huge pot, but we had no leftovers. So this was seriously a winner. If you have a nice snowy day or it's cold, or even if it's not, I so recommend making this for your family if they like baked potato soup, because it was really that good. So I did, at this time while I was mixing everything together, I did have the oven going at 400 degrees. And then I lightly rubbed oil over every potato after I washed it. And then I placed them on a baking sheet and baked them for about 45 minutes or until they were tender. And then I took them out and I cooled them for quite a while. I want to say a couple of hours before I tried peeling them. And actually, no, that's not true now that I'm thinking about it, because I remember I was like burning my hands. So you're supposed to let them cool, and then you mash them and put them in once everything is kind of combined into the soup. So while the potatoes were in the oven, I chopped up bacon and I cooked that in this pot with chopped up onions, and then I removed them and I put in flour, butter, garlic in the pan, cooked it for a couple of minutes, and then I gradually put in the chicken broth, stirring continuously as I did it to kind of thicken it and make it more of a soup and not, very thin. And then again, you'll do the same with the milk and the cream. You just slowly add it in, whisking as you go, and you continuously stir to break up any lumps. And then once you have that kind of made as thick or as thin as you'd like, then you can add in the bacon and the sour cream, um, any ingredients that you hadn't so far. And then by that time, the potatoes were probably done and cooled. You peel off the skins, and that is incredibly easy if you do it this way. I don't usually do it that way, and for something like this, I suggest that you do. It was very, very easy to just take the skins, they came right off, and then I didn't mash the potatoes completely. We left some large chunks just to kind of break up the soup some, and that was really great that way. But then you'll add the potatoes into the soup and you'll stir it. You can add any toppings. I know a lot of people like to reserve some more bacon, green onions, more cheese, whatever your jam is, go ahead and do that. You can see as I'm peeling the potatoes, I'm like watching the steam come off of them. I don't know why. I was like, oh yeah, let them cool because obviously I have zero patience and I did not let them cool. They apparently they don't look like they're burning my hands and I have no marks or anything from it, so it's all good. But yeah, and then my kids, they kept coming in and talking to me, and so I think I was talking to Theo here, but I kept adding the skins into the bowl with the potatoes, and then I would come to, like when your kids are talking to you and you kind of space out for a minute because you're talking to them and you're not realizing what you're doing. That was like basically what I was doing here. I kept adding the skins to the bowl, and then I'm like, wait a second. So then I would have to take them out. But yeah, that's what I'm doing here. The recipe also says to do 4 large potatoes. I didn't have like huge potatoes. They were probably all about medium. I ended up doing 6 potatoes, and also I don't usually follow directions. I was like, well, 4 potatoes doesn't seem like enough for my family. I am glad that I added more because like I said, we had no leftovers after this. So I really needed those extra potatoes to kind of beef up the soup. So, if you have a larger family too, we are a family of 6. So if you have a larger family, I suggest doing a couple more than the 4 large potatoes that's in the recipe. I believe I did 6, possibly 7, but I think it was 6. And here is the finished soup. I served it with some fresh bread that I baked that day and butter and jam, and it was incredible. Probably 10 out of 10 for me. We are a big soup family. My family loves soup, especially during this time. We had just been snowed in, so there's still snow on the ground. It's still very cold, but this was perfect for a colder day. If you read that recipe card and you were like, what the heck is this? I'm right there with you. Um, this is Hobo casserole, and I don't know why it's called that. This is the first time that I'm making this, although as I was making it, it was very similar to other things I had made in the past. And you are going to notice that if you read the recipe card that I do not follow the instructions at all. This was the final day that we were snowed into our house, and I did not have a lot of ingredients left at this point. And we were unable to leave to drive to get ingredients. So I was kind of working with what I had, so you will not see me put in the seasonings and stuff like that. I did have seasonings. However, I randomly found a what are those called with the hands? Hamburger helper. I I found a packet of like the cheese, and this recipe is virtually making that. So that's what I'm adding in here. I found one of those. I didn't have a lot of cheese on hand. I didn't have other things. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to keep it really easy and simple, and just I added like the cheese packet or something of that. Everything else I think I did. I did not add the flour because these packets have like a thickening agent in them. Um, but without this, you will need the flour to thicken it up. I went through a bunch of the reviews, and people had a problem with it thickening up. So I highly suggest adding in the flour, and you can do it like right at this point where I'm adding in like the cheese and stuff. Add it to the hamburger once it's cooked and the onions, and stir it around for a couple minutes to thicken it up before you put in the beef broth and the milk. But yeah, that is why I'm kind of cheating in a way here. It was a very, very good recipe, and it had great reviews, other than it being a little soupier than people were wanting. But, and it came together really, really quick. The only things I would change is, like I said, adding in the flour to thicken it. And then also the recipe originally, I think I changed it on the recipe card, but it had you layer, and you'll see I'm doing that here. And then basically whenever I finished, I'm like, why would you layer it? It doesn't even, I don't know. So instead of layering them, I suggest mixing the potato slices with the hamburger mixture and then putting it in the pan and topping it with cheese and then baking. I'm not sure why they did the layering, and other people were kind of questioning it too in the reviews, but yeah, I would just mix them together, and then make sure you also slice your potatoes pretty thin. Otherwise, they will take quite a bit longer to cook. But all in all, even though this recipe is a little wonky, I get it. Um, it was a really, really good recipe. My family really enjoyed it. Again, I don't know why it's called hobo casserole, but it was a really good meal to have for like an easy weeknight dinner. It came together very quick, and even if I used the correct ingredients, it still would come together very quick. And then it was, just putting it in a casserole dish and throwing in the oven. You could prep it ahead of time and then cover it. And then, once dinner comes around, you can put it in the oven at 375 until like the cheese and everything is bubbly. I would say about 45 minutes. And yeah, we served it with broccoli, and you could do a salad. It was very, very good. and I know that I'll be adding this to my family's rotation of dinners. So as you can see, I went ahead and I did the layers. I used up all the potatoes. I also did more potatoes than what the recipe said because, again, it didn't seem like enough. I had cut up what it said. I had cut up 5 medium potatoes, and then I saw it. I'm like, that does not look like enough for my family of 6. So I cut up a couple more. I want to say 8 potatoes I cut up for my family, and it was just enough. We had no leftovers, so it was just enough. And I served it with a vegetable. But yeah, I was layering it, and then I got to the point where I'm like, why am I layering it? There's not even quite enough. So I ended up mixing them together, topping it with cheese, and throwing it in the oven. Like I said, very good meal, probably an 8 out of 10, but I loved how quick and easy and simple it was. And my family really, really enjoyed it. So another bowl meal. This is something I actually make pretty frequently. It is a very easy dish to throw together, and I cook the chicken. So how you cook the chicken is basically it cooks for quite a while, or at least that's how I do it. So I cook it and I kind of let it just simmer slowly. You can see I'm using the thigh and leg quarters. They're cheaper. It comes 10 pounds for about $8 in my location. But so I will do that. I'll cook them low and slow for at least an hour. Usually it's more. And then I'll take the chicken out, let it cool, I'll debone it, and then I'll put it back in to the pot. And whenever it's dinner time, I'll bring the pot back up to like a simmer to cook it a little. And while that's doing that, I'll assemble the bowls. This chicken, though, I think I do it so often because I always have all the ingredients on hand. It's a bunch of spices and broth, and you just cook the chicken in that. I usually will use a salsa that I already have on hand, or like a homemade pico de gallo. You throw that in and you just let it cook, and then it's so easy. So this is a meal that I cook pretty often, maybe once a week, and I think it seems like it's not as often because you can top it with so many different things and really make it your own. It's very versatile, so it doesn't always seem like the same meal every week. What you just saw me pour in was a jar of homemade salsa. My mother-in-law, she jars salsa every year from her garden, and we had just a little bit left. So I went ahead and added water because I needed more broth anyway. So I added water to it and poured all of that into the chicken mixture. when I opened, I'm just now seeing, I forgot, when I opened this rice, my husband had refilled the rice for us, and he wanted to make the entire box of rice fit into this canister. And so it was like leveled at the top. So whenever I unscrewed the canister, all this rice, you see me like picking them all up off the stove, all these rice grains went everywhere. So thank you, Kyle. This is basically the same rice that I was making in the other recipe. just put a little bit of oil in a pan and you cook the rice until it starts to brown. And then I usually do like a chicken broth that I pour in. And before I steam it, I will add in garlic and usually a frozen vegetable, a bag of frozen vegetables. I had only had frozen green beans at this point, which I never usually add, but I wanted to add a vegetable, so I went ahead and I just threw them in, and then they steam with the rice, and you can kind of stir it once the rice is steamed enough after about, I don't know, 10-15 minutes. And so yeah, that's why there's green beans. I don't usually use those. Usually I'll do like the carrots and peas and maybe green beans. I think they're like short green beans in the usual mixture that I do. But I did not have those this time and just used what we had. For the final recipe this week, I made a beef stroganoff. This is something from my childhood. My family has made this recipe since before I can even remember. It is a comfort meal for me, and I know that it's made several different ways depending on, the family or the people, but this is how my family has always made it. And I think because, I don't know, it's so simple, and I think we had it so often. My mom was a working mom, and so was my dad. This was a meal that was cheap and came together very quick. This is always a meal that I make when I'm trying to save in my grocery budget because it is very, very cheap. You'll see the ingredients are really cheap. I want to say like the whole meal is under $10. So very good price, and it comes together in less than an hour. It is a really great comfort food, and it makes a huge pot. So it's perfect for those really busy nights after school where you just want to get dinner done quick and out of the way. In the recipe, you will see there is an option to add green peppers. I did not do that this time, but it is one of my favorite ways to eat this. However, my family does not like green peppers usually. And so I do, however, whenever I do this, I cut them into larger strips so they have the option of removing them. I just think it has a really great flavor. So I always like adding green peppers, but usually I don't because my family doesn't like messing with them. But you will just boil a pot of water. You'll cook the pasta just according to directions. I did probably about a pound. It was a good amount of pasta. And then in a skillet, you'll cook ground beef and onions. I seasoned it with some seasoned salt. You can kind of do however you would like. Some people do garlic, salt, pepper. And then you'll add in, whenever the hamburger is almost done, you'll add in mushrooms that are sliced up. And then once you drain the pasta, you can put in your hamburger mixture into the pasta. And I do 2 cans of cream of mushroom. Of course, if you make your own cream of mushroom, that would be great to add. You do about 2 cups. And then a little bit of milk, and sour cream, and then salt and pepper to taste. It is very, very easy. Again, you can kind of add other things if you'd like other things, or leave some things out. I know some people don't like mushrooms. You could definitely leave them out. It's another very versatile dish. And I'm sitting here adding up the cost in my head. And so we buy our hamburger meat in bulk every month. And so it's pretty cheap. This meal, I want to say, is actually like right around $5 for this huge pot in my area. And that's, like I said, with buying meat in bulk. So this is a really great meal if you are trying to save on groceries and you have a lower grocery budget. But anyway, that is all I have for you today. If there's any recipes that you are interested in seeing, I would love to hear from you. You can either reach out to me on Instagram, that is the easiest way, or you can leave a comment below, and I can make the recipe and share it on my channel. I'm hoping to continue to share these dinner videos with you each week, probably on Fridays. That way, if you are struggling with dinner ideas, maybe it will give you some new inspiration to switch up your meal plans. And for anyone that's on a lower grocery budget, they can fix these into their budget for the upcoming week. Anyway, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.